When Johnny Cash walked through the heavy iron gates of Folsom Prison that morning, you probably think he was just carrying his guitar and a pick. Maybe you picture him confident, swaggering in like the king of country music. You'd be wrong. It was January 13th, 1968. The California sun was hitting those cold stone walls, casting long, sharp shadows across the yard. But Johnny was sweating. Cold sweat. And it wasn't just the nerves. It was the kind of sweat that comes when your body is screaming for something it can't have, and your soul is screaming for redemption it doesn't deserve. Inside his long black coat pocket, right over his beating heart, he was hiding a crumpled piece of paper. It had a small stain on the corner, maybe coffee, maybe blood, maybe just the grime of a cell floor. But the prison warden, a man named Sterling, had done everything in his power to keep that paper out of the building. Let's pause for a moment. To understand the weight of that paper, you have to understand the man carrying it. This wasn't the polished icon you see on t-shirts today. This was a man on the edge. The pills had hollowed out his cheeks. His eyes were dark pools of exhaustion. The record executives in Nashville had laughed at him just weeks before. A live album in a prison? They scoffed. Johnny, you're washed up. You're a walking ghost. Don't embarrass us. But Johnny wasn't listening to the suits in the glass towers. He was listening to a different frequency, the static of the lost, the lonely, and the damned. As the tour bus had pulled up to the gate earlier that morning, the air inside changed. The laughter of the band died down. Looper Perkins, holding his electric guitar like a weapon, looked out the window at the guard towers. Marshal Grant nervously tapped his foot. They all felt it. Folsom wasn't just a venue. It was a beast that chewed men up and spat them out. Warden Sterling was waiting at the entrance. He wasn't a large man, but he had eyes like flint, hard, unblinking, and devoid of mercy. He viewed Johnny Cash not as a guest, but as a contagion, a risk. He stopped Johnny at the checkpoint. The metal detectors buzzed. The guards patted down the band members with unnecessary roughness. When Sterling stepped in front of Johnny, the air grew heavy. "Mr. Cash," Sterling said, his voice dry as dust, "let's get one thing straight before you take a single step further. You are here because the state allowed it, not because I want it. These men, animals, they don't need entertainment. They need discipline." Johnny stared at him, his jaw set. He didn't say a word. Sterling stepped closer, invading Johnny's personal space. "You sing your songs, you take your money, and you leave. But if you try any stunts, if you mention the conditions in here, or if you try to rile them up against my guards, there won't be a way out for you. Do you understand me?" Johnny just smiled, that crooked, defiant smile of his, the one that looked like a scar. He adjusted his collar, looked Sterling up and down, and walked past him without uttering a syllable. It was the loudest silence Sterling had ever heard. But June Carter, walking right behind him, clutching her auto harp to her chest, was holding her breath. She knew what was in that pocket. She had seen Johnny hide it there on the bus. She knew that piece of paper was a match, and Folsom Prison was a room full of gasoline. The inside of Folsom Prison didn't smell like a normal building. It smelled of bleach, stale tobacco, unwashed bodies, and fear. It was a sensory assault. The clanging of steel doors echoed endlessly, a rhythm of confinement that never stopped. Johnny and the Tennessee Three were led to the cafeteria area for the sound check. The cafeteria, a cavernous hall with long metal tables bolted to the floor. It was empty now, but soon it would be filled with 2,000 of California's most dangerous men. As the crew set up the microphones, Johnny wandered away from the light. He always did that. While others sought the spotlight, Johnny sought the shadows. He walked toward the edge of the stage area, looking out at the empty rows. That's when he saw him. A young officer was standing near a support pillar, looking nervous. He kept checking his watch, then checking the door where the warden had exited. His name was Officer Miller. He was young, maybe too young for a place like Folsom. His uniform looked a size too big, and his eyes didn't have that dead look the other guards had. Miller locked eyes with Johnny. He took a hesitant step forward, then stopped. Johnny nodded, a subtle invitation. Miller approached quickly, keeping his voice to a harsh whisper. "Mr. Cash, just Johnny, son," the man in black replied, his voice a low rumble. "Johnny, sir, I could lose my badge for this. I could lose everything. The warden, he checks everything that comes in and out of Block 5. Block 5? Johnny asked, his interest piqued. Block 5 was notorious, solitary confinement. The hole, where they put men they wanted to break. Yes, sir. There's a kid down there. They call him Jimmy the Kid. He's been in the hole for 3 weeks. Darkness, 24 hours a day." Johnny felt a tightening in his chest. He knew darkness. He lived in it. "What about him?" Johnny asked. The officer reached into his tunic. His hand was shaking. He pulled out a yellow, wrinkled envelope. It looked like it had been folded and unfolded 1,000 times. "He wrote this," Miller said, shoving it into Johnny's hand. "He begged me, said he knew you were coming, said he'd take a beating if it meant you got this letter. I promised him, Johnny. I promised him I'd get it to you." Johnny looked at the envelope. It was warm. It felt heavy, heavier than paper should feel. "Why is he in the hole?" Johnny asked. Miller looked down at his boots. "Because he was singing, Johnny. He was singing your songs during count time. The warden said it was inciting a disturbance. He threw him in the dark to shut him up." Rage. Pure, white-hot rage flared in Johnny's eyes. It was the same rage that had led him to kick out the footlights at the Grand Ole Opry, the same rage that made him drive his truck into a tree. But this time, it wasn't self-destructive. It was focused. "Thank you, son," Johnny said, gripping the officer's shoulder. "You did good." Suddenly, the heavy metal doors swung open. Warden Sterling strode in, flanked by 2 senior guards. Officer Miller jumped back, terrified, and quickly blended into the shadows. Johnny turned his back to the warden, shielding the transfer. With a practiced motion, he shoved the letter into the inside pocket of his long black coat, right next to his heart. Johnny Cash wore black not for fashion, but for the poor, the beaten down, and the forgotten. If this story touched your soul, please leave a like to honor his memory. To keep the legend alive and hear more untold stories from the darkness, make sure to subscribe. Thank you for helping us keep the man in black's voice heard. The sound check continued, but Johnny wasn't really there. His body was going through the motions, strumming the chords, checking the mic levels, but his mind was down in Block 5. He excused himself to use the restroom, a small, grimy facility backstage. He locked the door. His hands were trembling. He needed a pill. God, he needed a pill. His body was aching. His nerves were frayed wires. But he didn't reach for the bottle. He reached for the letter. He sat on the edge of a rusty sink and opened the envelope. The paper was thin, cheap prison stationery. The handwriting was jagged, scrawled with a pencil nub in the dark. It read, "Mr. Cash, I don't know if you'll ever read this. Officer Miller is a good man, but this place kills good men. My name is Jimmy. I'm 19 years old. My daddy said I was a mistake. The law says I'm a mistake. They say I'm rotten to the core. I've done bad things, Mr. Cash. I won't lie. I stole cars. I got into fights. I was angry at the world. But when my mama used to play your songs on the radio back home, in the kitchen while she was cooking, I didn't feel like a mistake. I felt like someone understood. I know I can't come to the show today. The warden says I have to stay in the dark. He says your music is poison. But I wanted to tell you, even if I'm in the hole, I'm gonna be listening. I'll put my ear to the cold wall, and I believe, I truly believe, I'll hear you. Don't let them silence you, Johnny. Sing for us. Sing for the ones who can't speak. Your friend, Jimmy." Johnny stared at the paper. A tear, hot and heavy, rolled down his cheek and landed on the sink. He looked at himself in the cracked mirror. He saw the lines on his face, the gray in his hair. He saw a sinner, a drug addict, a man who had failed his family, his God, and himself 1,000 times. But in that letter, Jimmy didn't see a sinner. He saw a savior, 19. He's just a boy. At that moment, the door handle rattled. "Mr. Cash, 5 minutes to showtime." A guard barked from the outside. Johnny wiped his face. He folded the letter carefully. He didn't put it back in the envelope. He put it directly into his pocket. He buttoned his coat. When he unlocked the door and stepped out, June was waiting for him. She saw his eyes. She saw the redness. She reached out and touched his arm. "John, is everything okay?" Johnny looked at her, and for the first time that day, his eyes were clear. The craving for the pills was gone. It was replaced by a mission. "No, June," he said, his voice like gravel. "Everything is not okay, but it's about to be." The cafeteria was packed, 2,000 men. The noise was deafening, a roar of pent-up aggression, excitement, and desperation. The air was thick with cigarette smoke, creating a blue haze that hung over the crowd. These were men who had been forgotten by society, faces scarred by knives, bodies tattooed with gang signs, eyes hardened by years of watching their backs. But today, they weren't inmates. Today, they were an audience. Lining the perimeter, on the catwalks above, were 50 guards. They held shotguns and rifles, barrels pointed down at the crowd. They were tense. They knew the statistics. Folsom was a powder keg. One wrong word, one spark, and this whole place could blow. Warden Sterling sat in the very front row, center stage. He sat with his legs crossed, arms folded, flanked by his lieutenants. He wasn't clapping. He wasn't smiling. He was watching Johnny like a hawk waiting for a field mouse to make a mistake. The announcer stepped up. "Hello, He was nervous. "Here is Johnny Cash." Johnny burst onto the stage. The roar was physical. It hit him in the chest. "Hello, I'm Johnny Cash." Boom. The first chord of Folsom Prison blues rang out. "I hear the train a-comin', it's rollin' round the bend." The crowd went wild. They banged their tin cups on the tables. They stomped their feet. The floor shook. Johnny was dancing, moving, pointing his guitar like a rifle at the guards. He was channeling their anger. He was one of them. He played cocaine blues. He played 25 minutes to go. With every song, the energy ratcheted up. The guards on the catwalks gripped their weapons tighter. Sterling's face grew tighter, redder. But Johnny wasn't looking at the crowd. He wasn't looking at June. He was looking through the back wall of the cafeteria. In his mind, he was tracing the pipes and the concrete, down the corridors, deep into the bowels of the prison, to Block 5. He imagined Jimmy sitting on the cold floor, pressing his ear against the damp stone, trying to catch a vibration, a murmur of the music. Midway through the set, the band prepared for a slow ballad. The crowd quieted down a bit. Johnny wiped the sweat from his forehead. He took a drink of water. His hands were shaking again, but this time from adrenaline. He looked at Warden Sterling. The warden gave him a look that said, "Keep going. Finish up. Get out." Johnny stepped to the microphone. He gripped the stand so hard his knuckles turned white. "You know," Johnny said, panting slightly, "we're having a good time here today." The crowd cheered. "But," Johnny's voice dropped an octave, "I can't stop thinking about where we are." The cheering stopped. A hush fell over the room. "I can't stop thinking about the men who aren't in this room." Warden Sterling uncrossed his legs. He sat up straight. This was off script. Johnny continued, his eyes scanning the crowd. "I walked in here today, and a man, a brave man, gave me something. Something I wasn't supposed to have." On the catwalks, the guards shifted. Safety catches on rifles clicked off. Click, click. The sound was audible in the silence. Johnny reached into his coat pocket. June Carter stepped forward from the back of the stage. Her eyes went wide. "John," she whispered, too low for the mic to pick up. "Be careful." Johnny pulled out the crumpled yellow piece of paper. Warden Sterling stood up. He actually stood up in the middle of the show. He raised a hand as if to order the sound engineer to cut the mic. But he hesitated. 2,000 prisoners were watching him. If he cut the sound now, there would be a riot. He knew it. Johnny knew it. It was a standoff. The man in black versus the man. Johnny unfolded the paper slowly, deliberately. The microphone picked up the crinkle of the paper. It sounded like thunder in the silent hall. "This morning," Johnny said, his voice echoing off the walls, "I got a letter from a friend of yours. His name is Jimmy." A murmur went through the crowd. They knew Jimmy. They knew the kid. "He can't be with us right now because he's in the hole. Block 5. Boos started to rise from the crowd. Angry, low growls. Johnny held up a hand to quiet them. He's there because he was singing my songs, because he wanted a little bit of freedom in his soul. Johnny turned his body and looked directly at Warden Sterling, who was now standing red-faced, veins bulging in his neck. The warden told me not to talk about this. He told me to stick to the set list. He told me, you men didn't deserve to hear about the reality of this place. The crowd was on its feet now. The tension was at a breaking point. But let me tell you something, Mr. Warden, Johnny roared, pointing a finger at the man. This is my stage. This is my microphone. And these men, they are my people. The explosion of noise was indescribable. It wasn't just cheering. It was a release of years of oppression. Johnny looked back at the paper. Jimmy wrote to me. He said, if you sing, I'll put my ear to the wall and I'll listen. Well, Jimmy, Johnny grabbed the microphone stand and yanked it off its base. He walked to the very edge of the stage, as close to the prisoners as he could get. I want to make sure he hears this. I want every man in this room to sing so loud that we crack the walls of Block 5. I want us to sing so loud that the warden can't ever silence us again. He turned to the band. Greystone Chapel. Key of E. Hit it. The band launched into the song. It was a song written by another inmate, Glenn Shirley, but in that moment, Johnny repurposed it. It became an anthem for Jimmy. Inside the walls of prison my body may be, but my Lord has set my soul free. Johnny didn't just sing it, he screamed it. He howled it. He was sweating, spitting, crying. He was pouring every ounce of pain, every addiction, every sin he had ever committed into that microphone. And the crowd, they sang with him. 2,000 voices joined in a chorus that shook the dust from the rafters. Rumor has it, the sound engineer, caught up in the moment, pushed the faders all the way up into the red. The speakers distorted, pushing the sound waves through the concrete floor. Let's leave the cafeteria for a moment. Let's travel down the dark, damp corridors, past the checkpoints, down the stairs, into the bowels of the earth. Block 5. Solitary. It was pitch black. No windows, just a heavy steel door with a small slot for food. The air was cold and smelled of mold. Inside one of those cells, a 19-year-old boy was curled up on a thin mattress. He was shivering. He hadn't seen light in 3 weeks. He was losing his mind. The silence was so loud it hurt his ears. He had been waiting all day. He knew the concert was happening. He had prayed, please God, let me hear something, anything. Then he felt it. At first it was just a vibration in the floor, a rhythmic thumping, thump, 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 like a heartbeat. Then a faint sound, muffled, distant, but melodic. Jimmy scrambled off his mattress. He crawled to the corner of the cell where the water pipes ran through the wall. He pressed his ear against the cold, sweating concrete. He closed his eyes, and there it was, faint, ghostly, but unmistakable. The boom-chicka-boom sound of a guitar, and a voice, a deep, baritone voice that cut through the stone. My Lord has set my soul free. Tears streamed down Jimmy's dirty face. He wasn't alone. He wasn't a mistake. The man in black was singing to him. The whole world was singing to him. In that dark, cold hell, Jimmy smiled, a wide, beatific smile. For the first time in his life, he felt free. Back in the cafeteria, the song ended. The final chord rang out and hung in the air. Johnny stood there, chest heaving, tears streaming down his face mixed with sweat. He looked drained. He looked like he had just fought a war. He walked to the edge of the stage and looked at Warden Sterling. The warden was sitting down now. He looked small, defeated. He knew he had lost control. He knew that for 1 hour, Johnny Cash had run this prison, not him. Johnny didn't say anything to him. He didn't have to. When the show was over, the guards rushed to hustle the band out. They wanted them gone before the adrenaline turned into a riot. But as they were walking toward the exit, Johnny stopped. He planted his feet. "Where are you going, Mr. Cash?" a guard barked. "The bus is this way." "No," Johnny said. "I'm going to Block 5. The guard laughed nervously. "Sir, you can't go down there. It's restricted." Johnny turned to Warden Sterling, who had followed them out. "You let me see the boy," Johnny said, his voice low and dangerous, "or I walk out to those reporters waiting outside the gate, and I tell them exactly what I saw in here today. I tell them about the beatings. I tell them about the food. I tell them everything." Sterling stared at him. He ground his teeth. He looked at the reporters gathering near the gate. He knew Johnny would do it. 5 minutes, Sterling hissed. "You get 5 minutes. And no cameras." Johnny went down. He walked into the darkness of Block 5. He had the guards open the heavy steel door. There, in the dim light of the hallway, Johnny Cash met Jimmy. The boy looked like a skeleton. He was shaking, but when he saw the silhouette of the man in black in his doorway, he tried to stand up. Johnny didn't care about the filth. He didn't care about the smell. He walked into the cell and hugged the boy. He held him like a father holds a son. "I heard you," Jimmy whispered, sobbing into Johnny's black coat. "I heard you, Johnny." "I know, son," Johnny said. "I sang it for you." Johnny took a set list from his pocket, the list of songs he had played that day. He took out a pen and signed it. To Jimmy, "Keep the faith, Johnny Cash." He taped it to the cold wall of the cell. Johnny left Folsom that day, but a part of him stayed behind. Jimmy never made it out of prison. Records show he passed away a few years later, still incarcerated. But the guards say that until the day he died, that signed set list remained on his wall. No one dared to take it down, not even the warden. Johnny Cash wore black for the rest of his life. People asked him why. Was it a gimmick? Was it for fashion? He wrote a song about it. "I wear the black for the poor and the beaten down. I wear it for the prisoner who has long paid for his crime." That day at Folsom, carrying a secret letter in his pocket, risking his career for a 19-year-old boy he had never met, Johnny Cash proved he wasn't just a singer. He was a witness. He was the conscience of a nation that wanted to look away. He showed us that redemption isn't about being perfect. It's about showing up for the ones who are lost in the dark and letting them know they are not alone. Johnny Cash could have played it safe. He could have ignored that letter, but he chose to be the voice for the voiceless. He proved that even in the darkest dungeon, a little bit of light can get in. If this story touched your heart, and if you believe that every human being deserves a moment of mercy, please hit that like button. It helps us share these stories with more people. And don't forget to subscribe to the channel so we can keep the legend alive together. Because you never know, there might be a Jimmy in your life who just needs to know someone is listening. Thanks for watching. Stay in the shadows, but always look for the light.